Good morning, I'm Morgan Donner, and today's video is all about how to make a medieval men's hood. Specifically, I'm interested in creating one from the Nuremberg house books, also known as the 12 Brothers books, which is some books from Germany. They're really cool. For the most part, these are pretty normal, standard medieval hoods, with one exception. They've kind of gone away from the whole leer pipe fashion from years prior, and instead that sort of oddly evolved into this kind of front and or back flap deal. But you can leave off the flaps. It'll be a perfectly normal medieval hood without them, but let's get to it. Starting off, you're going to need some measurements of your noggin to make that hood happen.
Voiceover time. Measure around your face, giving yourself an extra inch or so of ease so that you can open your jaw, and then transfer half of that measurement to the fabric from the folded edge up top down.
In order to make sure that you can actually physically pull it on over your head, we're going to need head circumference. Ugh, my hair is slippery.
Again, fold this in half and measure perpendicularly from your first face line. For a simple hood like this, these two are really the only measurements you need. Although if you want your hood skirt to be of a particular length, consider measuring that out too. I'm just eyeballing it, aiming for just a smidge past the shoulder. Make 45-degree angle marks away from the head measurements. The back of the head needs to be rounded off a little bit for the style too. Cut out the hood, leaving plenty of room for seam allowance. I didn't mention it before because it was a little bit out of frame, but whenever you draw the rounded hemline of the mantle, make sure that your corners start at right angles. To make sure that the hood will drape nicely over your shoulders, we'll need to add some godettes to each side. Cut almost up to the neck and toss a triangle in there. I literally just grabbed the cutoff from the right of the hood over here and stuck it in. To verify that your godette is wide enough, just measure from shoulder to shoulder, giving the same drape that the hemline will have, and then compare that to the hood pattern. Looks good, so I'll keep on going. I can remove the excess length from the new insert, but do be careful to leave a little bit of extra. You're going to need that in a moment. Flip the triangle or godette over and pin it to one edge of the new cut. Repeat the same thing on the other side of the hood. Sew the pinned seam, starting from the outside, and as you make your way in, shift the tip of the godette as shown. Rotate the godette triangle to the second seam. I like to keep the needle inserted while I do that, and then sew the second seam. Inserting godettes can be a little tricky, so consider searching online for how to sew a godette if you've never done one before. I recognize that I'm not showing it very clearly here, sorry about that. Repeat the same steps for the second godette, and now we can join the front and back seams of the hood. Make sure that you have the outer fabric sides together and pin them in place. For the front seam, stop pinning at the neck. For the back seam, pin all the way up, including around the little curved bit here. Speaking of that curved section, make sure that when you're sewing to sort of gradually leave the seam, stop it too abruptly and you'll end up with a sort of bump, kind of like you would with a badly sewn dart. Success! The main seams of the hood are sewn, and if you want to call it quits here, you totally can. This is a perfectly functional hood. That said, I'd like to go ahead and secure the edges to keep them from fraying. Starting with the godettes, I'll trim away half of the seam allowance on one side, and then fold the longer allowance edge over the shorter one. You can sew and flip the edges as you go along, using the needle tip to sort of tuck the fabric in right before each stitch, or you can pin the seam allowance down first with several pins and then sew. It's much less fiddly as you go. No fancy stitches are required. You can use a whip stitch like me because that shit's my jam, or you can use a running stitch, a back stitch, blanket stitch, whatever suits your fancy. For the face opening of the hood, I've turned the edge over twice and pinned it down. following that turned edge into the front seam. Unlike the other seams where I went for sort of a flat felled approach, the front is just a pair of twice turned allowances. Double the work because you have to sew each side, but it does look very neat and tidy. Clean up the hem by cutting away any ragged edges and fold this edge twice too. All of the raw edges of the hood are now contained and will stand up to the angriest of washing machines. Excellent! If you just want a normal hood, stop here, but if you want to explore the curious nature of the front and/or back flap hood thing, continue on. I'm cutting a strip of fabric about 10 inches or so wide. In the 12 Brothers Housebook illustrations, some of the hoods have straps as narrow as maybe 5 inches, while others are almost the width of the body, so maybe 18. 10 seems like kind of a good compromise. I'm finishing up the edges of the hood with a narrow hem and whip stitching the folded edge down. A quick little bit of ironing to flatten things out, and then we're ready to attach the front and back panel. I've temporarily pinned them in place just to check if things looked right, and then did more pins and some stitching to hold it. I sort of wish I had sewn it closer to the neck, where these stitches would have been hidden by the folds near the neck, but the panels would have been too short. Oh well, learn from my mistake, and go ahead and attach these panels a little bit higher up. And now the hood is all done. As is the whole outfit, actually. I hope you enjoyed watching me make this hood, and if you're inspired to make your own hood or any other part of this outfit, I would love to see it. Please do tag me on Instagram at Morgan Donner or on Facebook page Morgan Donner Sewing Party. If you're tired of all this boy clothing nonsense, you're in luck, folks, as I'm going to soon be starting a very sexy heraldic gown in the near future. Stay tuned.